Hey y'all, it's Rachel K and welcome back. We are finally back with another video. It has been a hot minute, so I hope you're excited to be back because I'm kind of excited to be back too. So you may have noticed we're kind of in a different background today. I've never filmed in my bedroom slash office before, but this is where we are. So I'm kind of bringing you to a new place, showing you like a new dimension. I don't know where I'm pointing, but there we go. This is where we are. It has been a year since I last did a video. So today we are going to talk about the Enneagram. So what is the Enneagram, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. Enneagram is a specific personality typing system. It's actually used by some businesses and stuff like that. There's a lot of literature you can get about it. I only have this one book, but there are lots of books you can get. You can find lots of resources online. One of my favorite ones is Enneagram Institute. It's a really great place to start for learning about it. But basically, it's this personality system that has 9 different personality types that are your dominant personality types, and they're numbered 1 through 9. Now, it's a lot more integrated than some of the other personality types, and I really like that. The Enneagram is so open-ended and so open to the fact that people are at their core individuals and not just numbers or personality types, and I really like that about this because it's the most accurate one that I've ever read, and it's one that's like so easy to remember and so easy to understand that like now I'm just getting started. Like, I've read about it online, I've listened to some podcasts and some videos. I'm only about halfway through the book that I have here, and there's a lot more that I want to learn about it, but it's such a great system that like even just with my base level of knowledge, I can look at my friends and family and start noticing these patterns and types that they could possibly be. So the thing that I love most about the Enneagram though is that it acknowledges the differences that can exist within the types. And I want to show you something as well, actually. I'll show you my own test results, and also I'm going to show you how the little circle works. So let me zoom in. Okay, there we go. This is the Enneagram circle basically. And you can see it has points 1 through 9, all kind of connected, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit as well. I'm not going to go too in depth because I'm not like an expert or anything, but I wanted to show you that so you kind of understand how it works. So each type on that circle, one of the ways it incorporates differences is that each type on that circle has 2 adjacent types. So I'm a 9, which I'm going to talk about, and a 9 is adjacent to a 1 and an 8 in that little circle. So 1 and 8 are my potential wings. Technically, all of us have a little bit of every single type. If you were perfectly balanced, you would have 16 points in every single type, but that's not how it usually works out. Like, you have ups and downs. You're going to be stronger in one type than the others. You're going to have a dominant type. But then you do also have similarities with other types and connections to other types and your wings. So let's talk about the wings. On either side of your personality, you have another wing, and you're gonna draw from both of them sometimes, but most people have a dominant wing. So for me, I'm a 9 and my dominant wing is a number 8. So that 8 has some contradictory patterns that are actually different than the 9. So like a good example of that is that 9 is they avoid conflict. They don't want to get into a conflict, whereas an 8 is usually not afraid of conflict. 8 is usually pretty straightforward. One person I heard, I wish I could remember who so I could give them credit, but I don't remember at this point, but they said the difference between like an 8 and a 9 with an 8 wing, if you were at a party, if the 8 dominant personality type wanted something across the room from the party, they would just barge straight through the middle, like elbowing people out of the way and go get what they wanted. Whereas a 9 with an 8 wing is still gonna go get that thing they want, but they're gonna find like the path of least resistance. They're gonna go around the room or cut through where there's not a lot of people and then go get that thing. But I love the incorporation of the wings because it accounts for some of our own like contradictions. like being a 9, I do typically avoid conflict. I will go along with the crowd in a lot of situations just to go with whatever is easiest and to prevent any kind of conflict or trouble within the group that I'm in. But also having that 8 wing, sometimes I can be very dominant with the 8 wing. It will come out and I'll want what I want, and then I will just be kind of stubborn about getting it, but in a more polite way perhaps than a straight up 8 might be sometimes. But I think that's really cool because it's like a 9 with a 1 wing could be extremely different than a 9 with an 8 wing. And then another way that they compensate for the differences between individuals is also how healthy or unhealthy you are. So in the Enneagram, you can be like at the very, very top of your type where you are healthiest and just like everything's basically perfect for you in terms of your mental and emotional health, or you can be at the very, very bottom where you're very extremely unhealthy and exhibiting all the negative traits of your type and none of the positive traits. And most people obviously are going to fall somewhere in the middle. So a healthy 9 or even an average 9 is going to be very different from an unhealthy 9. So I like that it incorporates, you know, it's not all just positive, it's not all negative. It depends on where you're at in your level of health with your type. Like I said, we all have a little bit of every type. Like you can read through any type and there are going to be things that, you know, you could relate to because we're all human and we all experience that. But whatever your primary type is what you're going to relate to the most and what you're going to be like most of the time with most people throughout the expanse of your life. So like when you take the test that's in this book, you take it looking back on the entirety of your life, how you've been most of the time in most situations. So we're not looking at like aberrations in mood and health or unhealth and stuff like that. We're looking at the big picture. Each type also can deteriorate to or go to another type depending on how healthy or unhealthy they are. So for the 9s, when we get more unhealthy, we tend to start behaving like an average to unhealthy 6. When we get more healthy, we can start going up into the behaviors of an average to healthy 3. I really, really like the way that it just like connects all the pieces. And one of the things that I've really loved about this is as I'm reading through it and like thinking about the people that I know and have known, I start to understand that like we all feel similar things, but we all feel them in different ways and for different reasons. And I think that's one way in which this is really helpful because it helps you understand both yourself and other people, how and why you're experiencing things the way you are, why you're reacting to things the way you are, the motivations behind people. Like one thing I noticed right away is it talks about how 9s will like repress. They will not acknowledge conflict or stressful things. They will bury it under the rug and ignore it as long as they can because they don't want anything to upset their internal peace. That's what the 9s are all about, is like their internal peace and keeping things even keel and not being upset or stressed out or dealing with conflict basically. And so sometimes when I've been trying to give advice to other people, I've been giving them advice coming from that 9 point of view where I'm like, well, that's bothering you, just don't think about it. Like, because that's what I would do. I would just ignore the problem until it went away or until I was forced to deal with it or whatever. I just don't acknowledge it. So if I see other people are stressed out, my response to them has sometimes been, well, just don't think about it. But that's not how everybody is. There are some types, like a 4 is a great example, who really dwell on things and they can't just let it go. They can't just ignore it. And also, obviously, ignoring problems is not always the best answer. Sometimes we have to deal with them, which is another thing that it's good to be aware of, is understanding like the limitations of your type and how you can kind of be in a negative way and how that can negatively impact you. So the other thing I wanted to show you that I thought was pretty neat, I'll show you one of the pages of the test. This is kind of how the test is set up that's in this book. It's sections of either or questions. You have to choose one or the other and then you mark it on your little thing and then you tally it up at the bottom when you're done. Also, I don't know why I wrote the numbers on top instead of in the boxes where they belong, but I got highest in 9, which I already knew because I'd read through all the types and determined that I was a 9, so I was expecting that. But then I also got really high in a 5, which explains why I originally misidentified as a 5, and then I also got high in a 4. And then also there were, you know, reasonably high things in other types, like 6 I had 17, type 7 I had 15, which was surprising to me because I didn't expect to get a high number in type 7. I would have thought that'd be the opposite of type 7. But that was really fascinating to me for a couple of reasons. One, it shows that like even though 9 is my dominant personality, I do still have traits from all the other types, and that's going to be the same for anybody who takes this. I kind of have made up my own little descriptions for each type. Everyone that you read has like a different way of describing them, but type 9 to me, the catchphrase that comes to my mind first when I think about type 9 is they're the everything and nothing people. They kind of sponge up whoever is around them. So that can kind of lead to issues with knowing the self-image, feelings of belonging. Type 9s can have trouble with that, which is actually kind of getting to the whole point of why I'm telling you about the Enneagram and how it relates to my YouTube channel. Something that I heard it described as that I thought was good was like they don't know what to do, so they just don't do it. And I can relate to that a lot. And I can relate to that like lack of a sense of belonging because as a type 9, you're always a little bit off-centered. And I know this can vary between individuals, obviously. And again, I'm just getting started with this. I'm not an expert. There are experts who can explain it a lot better. But the type 9 likes to go with the flow. They like to take the path of least resistance. They're called sins, or sometimes called passions, can be sloth, which isn't necessarily like a physical sloth, although it could be. It can also just be like an inaction. And that can come from the fear of like things being upsetting, or fear of conflict, fear of things not going well and rocking the boat. Like 9 doesn't want to rock the boat. The 9 also can share traits with a lot of different people. Like they can be very good mediators because they can see all sides to an argument. Because of that, because of their tendency to like sponge up other people and go with the flow, and some people have even described it as like finding their identities in the people they're around, they can lack a sense of self and they can feel like they don't really belong anywhere because no matter what group they're in, they're kind of molding themselves to that group in a way. And so then at the end of the day, they don't feel like they're being their authentic self in any group because they're being only part of themselves in all groups, if that makes sense. And that is what I wanted to talk about in regards to my YouTube channel. So I definitely have struggled with this like feeling of not really feeling like I belong in any group completely because I feel like I can't really completely be myself in any group. I've always had this underlying fear of like people who like me because I homestead won't like any other parts of me. Like I've had this feeling like, oh, the people who like me because I farm are not gonna like my creative writing. Like they're not gonna like this other side of me that's equally as important to me as the farming. And that has been kind of a problem for me in terms of the YouTube channel. I have this desire to share other parts of myself, but also at the same time I have a fear of doing that because I'm afraid of how it will be received by other people, because I have this thought like, well, they are only here because you farm, and if you post anything about any other part of you, they're not gonna like it. And it feels disingenuous to me on the YouTube channel. That reminds me, there was a really good quote in here that I highlighted and dog-eared because I wanted to share it. And it said, by moving beyond merely knowing our type to the ability to see ourselves as we are, the shift from personality to essence takes place, and we discover that we can live differently. We discover that we can be free. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this system, the Enneagram, is it's not about putting you in a box and saying you're this type and this is how you are. It's about acknowledging that, hey, you're this type, which means sometimes you do these things and this is why. But you can also break out of that and become the best version of yourself. Because like according to the Enneagram, and I would agree with this as well, personality isn't like actually who you are. It's how you interpret who you are, basically. That's how I understand it anyway, is that like your personality is how you interact with the world around you, but it's not necessarily who you are, it's just how who you are is interacting with the world around you. I think it's really useful, and I think it's really fascinating as well. And reading it and reading about the type 9, I was like, oh, there are other people who feel this way too. So I really think it's valuable. And all of this is to say, number one, you should check out the Enneagram. I don't know if I even made any sense in this video talking about it, but you should check it out. It does make sense if you read the actual experts about it. Find out your type. I would recommend just start by reading the descriptions of the type and see which one jives with you, and then you can take the test as well. And all of this is leading up to the point that I'm gonna try to start posting videos again. I'm gonna try to post them maybe like once a month as a conservative estimate of how often I could do it possibly. And I do, and this is something I've mentioned before too and didn't do it, I do want to incorporate more than just the homesteading. My recording was stopped automatically, so I don't know where we left off. But for me is going to come up some. It's part of my life, but there are other parts of my life too that I also want to share. Like I loved doing the videos when I was on road trips, and so I'm kind of like, this needs to become a bigger part of my life and also of my creative endeavors through YouTube, is to take more road trips and document them. I'm going to talk more about probably health and fitness, because I'm still, like, obviously I haven't gotten very far, but I'm still trying to improve in that area. I do creative writing, and I would like to share a little bit of that as well, or at least part of like the process of what I'm going through there. So I don't know, that's just where I am. I don't know what the videos are going to be. Maybe they'll just be me talking, maybe I'll do something. It is what it is, and if you watch it and you like it, I appreciate it. And yeah, that's all I had today, so I will see you next time.